We've talked about libraries built in towers and libraries built in boats. Libraries carved in stone and buried deep under sand. But how about a library built out of books? Because in 1948, one man's trash was another man's treasure. Enter Tomi Ungerer, a designer, writer, and architect, who grew up in poverty during World War II Germany. He learned to draw and write stories when he was very young, and then became interested in architecture after hearing a speech from the architect Bruno Taut about the social role of buildings. Upon graduating university, Ungerer worked as an architect and set up his own studio, but his work was criticized for being too fantastical and modernist. So he went to work for an advertising agency, applying his talents to commercial projects. But after a while, he began to despise advertising, feeling that it was too manipulative and deceitful. So he moved to New York City. But soon after, his career was interrupted again, this time by being drafted into the army. After being captured and imprisoned, Unger returned to Europe to find everything in ruins. His wife had left him and he was desperate for inspiration. That's when he came upon a scrapyard filled with thousands of discarded children's books. So he did what anyone would. He collected several of them, shelved them in a cave, and wrote a story called The Mushroom Book. As he worked on the story, Unger realized that each page needed to be drawn and designed differently, based on the characters and setting of that page. And as he wrote more and more stories, he began to feel inspired again. Eventually, Unger published the book himself. Then he created a new story inside a cave using materials he found around him, like cobwebs and leaves. He opened his own art school and started to build his own house, drawing inspiration from traditional rural architecture. The house became an art gallery and performance space, and in 1977, UNESCO recognized it as a masterpiece of living architecture. Through all of this, Unger continued to design furniture, products, and buildings. But it was his illustrations for children's books that really captured the hearts of readers and critics alike. Over the course of his career, Unger won numerous awards, including the Hans Christian Andersen Award for his illustration of the Snow Queen, which was considered to be a landmark achievement in children's literature. He also published many influential art books and helped pioneer the pop art movement in America. In 2019, Tomi Ungerer died at the age of 86. But his legacy lives on in the children's library he left to the town of Nuremberg. In 2017, after years of planning and fundraising, the library was finally ready to open its doors. The interior of the library is pure magic. Each wall and shelf is covered with colorful illustrations that invite visitors to explore and discover. Visitors start their tour of the library in a dark tunnel that symbolizes the difficult period of World War II in Germany. As they make their way through the tunnel, they are greeted by a bright light that represents hope and new beginnings. Once they reach the other end of the tunnel, visitors enter the heart of the library, which is filled with books and games and cozy seating areas. The walls are adorned with Tomi Ungerer's artwork, which includes scenes from his childhood as well as illustrations from his famous books. The centerpiece of the library is a large dome that serves as both a reading area and a skylight. The dome is covered with a mural depicting the world as seen through a child's eyes. Below the dome is a table that serves as a stage for storytelling and other events. The library also has a cafe and gift shop that sells books and art supplies. The library has been a huge success since it opened its doors. It is a popular destination for families and schools, and it has received rave reviews from critics. The staff are passionate about sharing Tomi Ungerer's work and legacy with the world, and they have done an amazing job of creating a welcoming and inclusive space for everyone to enjoy. But the story of this library doesn't end there. It continues with every child who walks through its doors and discovers the joy of reading and creativity. The library is a testament to the power of imagination and the importance of preserving cultural heritage, and it is a fitting tribute to the life and work of Tomi Ungerer. Now, whenever I hear about a library constructed entirely out of books, I can't help but wonder how many books it takes to build a library. So I scoured the internet and the answer surprised me. It turns out that the number of books needed to build a library varies depending on the size and scope of the project. For example, the world's largest library, the British Library in London, contains over 170 million items, while the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., has more than 164 million items. On the other hand, a small public library might only have a few 100,000 books. In general, it is estimated that it takes roughly 100,000 books to build a medium-sized library with a collection of around 500,000 books. However, This figure can vary widely depending on the type of books, their size, and the construction materials used. Ultimately, the number of books required to build a library is less important than the impact that these libraries have on our society. Libraries are essential institutions that provide us with access to information, education, and entertainment. Whether it takes 100,000 books or 10 million books to build a library, the benefits that they provide to our communities are immeasurable. Now, this is my favorite part of the show, where I go to Reddit and look at the photos you guys have posted. Ed for me. And oh my goodness, look at this picture of a spider that ate a wasp nest. Oh my god. Look at this guy eating a sandwich like it's his last meal. Look at this adorable puppy with butterfly wings. Look at this blue chicken. Look at this cool toy car. I love this vintage Pixar animation. And finally, look at this guy's new haircut. It looks just like Mario's hair. But wait, what is this? What's this weird object? Why is it green? Is it a mushroom? A strange rock? Some sort of futuristic device? Well, that's for you to decide, because it's your turn to post a photo in the comments. Hello, my name is Author. I am a historian, and I run a channel about ancient history. And if you would like to hang out with me and some other lovers of history, we have an account. In the early days of the platform, I made a few videos about ancient Rome, and they got a pretty decent view count. I was encouraged. I thought, hey, maybe there's a real audience for this. But then those views stopped coming. People like my stuff, but they don't like it enough to stick around for the long haul. So when I started writing my first book, I had to balance the practical reality of chasing what audiences are actually going to support, with my dream of exploring the big questions of history. What ended up in the book is a mix of both. There's the story of Cicero and Catiline, my take on the classic conflict between democracy and tyranny, and stories of some fascinating minor figures in Roman history. The research process taught me so much, and I wanted to share that with people, but in a way that would also build an audience willing to invest in a longer form project. Well, it turns out I didn't fool anybody. My sales figures prove that very clearly. The big questions, the ones I was interested in, are not what people want to spend their money on. That's okay. I don't blame them. I love reading things as much as anyone else, and if I had $30 burning a hole in my pocket, I wouldn't drop it on a dense academic history either. But it left me with a question. How do I connect with people over history? How do I get them excited about the same things I am? As a channel, I have a lot more freedom. I can chase ideas, but I can also engage with what the community wants. The result of that balancing act is today's video. It's about a topic I genuinely care about, but I know others will find interesting too. The Library of Alexandria, famous throughout history for its colossal loss in some tragic fire, may have been a victim of war, but it may have also been undone by politics and social factors. A quick disclaimer: no one knows exactly how the Library of Alexandria worked. We have next to no first-hand sources. Everything we know comes from second-hand accounts, mostly by Greek and Roman writers who were often not very precise with their facts. Even our basic understanding of what the library looked like is based on a single ancient reconstruction that is considered inaccurate by modern standards. So everything in this video is speculation, mine and everyone else's. But I think this speculation is fun, and I hope you will too. Let's start with where this whole thing began, the Mausoleum, the Temple of the Muses. If you watch my channel regularly, you probably know a fair amount about how ancient libraries worked. Athens was full of them. Places like the Academy and the Lyceum, where philosophers taught their followers about subjects as diverse as geometry and politics. Even households had their own libraries, rooms packed with papyrus rolls where educated citizens could go to read or study. But none of these institutions compare to the Mausoleum, not just because of its size, but because of its scope. The main hall of the Mausoleum was the Pinacotheca, or picture gallery. It was a vast space with white marble columns and decorated with fine paintings. It was designed to impress visitors with its beauty as well as its learning. In the middle of the Pinacotheca was a fountain dedicated to the Muses, and the room was surrounded by busts of famous poets and philosophers. This room was reserved for scholars working on important projects, and they would meet in here to discuss their findings with each other. In total, there may have been as many as 200 scholars employed by the library at any one time. They would live in Alexandria, free from distractions, and devote themselves to collecting books and writing commentaries on them. But not just any books. The Ptolemaic dynasty that ruled Egypt saw themselves as the new pharaohs. They claimed descent from Alexander the Great and took his role as the ruler of the known world seriously. Their cultural policy reflected this. They wanted every book ever written, in any language, on any topic, from any civilization, and they wanted to catalog it completely, down to the last detail. We're not sure how they did it, but if they could acquire a book, they would have copied it in its entirety. They would then summarize the contents and write a detailed description of the book itself, its format, its binding, its writing style, anything that might be useful for someone trying to track down a particular piece of information. These descriptions would then be indexed by topic and listed on little clay labels called scribes, which would be attached to the shelf where the book belonged, so that if you wanted to look up a particular subject, you could locate the relevant books and begin your research. That meant that each copy of every book in the library was accompanied by an index card of sorts, and the staff of the library were constantly cross-checking their collection to make sure nothing was mislabeled or missing. They even apparently created a special language to describe the topics of books, and this linguistic coding system was so successful that historians can use it to figure out what topics were popular at the time. It sounds great, right? Imagine going to the library to do some research. You could find everything in one place, but this ideal was threatened by the scale of the project. To organize all this material took manpower, and manpower means money. The problem was that the Ptolemaic kings never spent money on the library out of the goodness of their hearts. They only did it when it was politically expedient. A king like Ptolemy I, who came to power after Alexander the Great died, spent heavily on acquiring books to show off his power. His successors didn't care as much, so funding dropped. Zenodotus, the head librarian, would later write letters begging for more money, pointing out that the rivals in Rome were spending lavishly on public works, and asking why he wasn't getting more support. The answer, we suspect, was that the library was seen as a tool of propaganda, and propaganda is cheap. You want to talk about how great your dynasty is. It's easier to do that with military parades and fancy coins than with abstract intellectual projects. But that changed when Cleopatra came to power. She married her brother Ptolemy XIII and began a series of political reforms to bolster royal authority. Her program included opening new temples and refurbishing old ones, including the Mausoleum. She funded a large expansion of the library's operations and turned it into the jewel of the city, a showcase for her and her dynasty. It was during this period that the most ambitious cataloging projects occurred, as well as the invention of the card catalog, which allowed researchers to track down books by subject without having to search the entire collection. So we tend to think of the library as losing steam after Ptolemy I's death, but that isn't really true. It went through periods of growth and decline, and its fate was tied to the ups and downs of Ptolemaic politics. That was true of the library as a whole, but it was especially true of the Pinacotheca, the room where the scholars met. At its height, it was a glorious symbol of royal munificence, a room where men could pursue wisdom free from distraction. But when money was tight, the Pinacotheca became a place where scholars had to fight for survival, squabbling over dwindling resources and facing harassment from the authorities. Cleopatra's secretary, a man named Aristarchus, complained bitterly about the library's behavior during her reign, saying that it was filled with parasites and rogues. During her brother's reign, it seems that Cleopatra was so unpopular that scholars felt unsafe in the city, and the Pinacotheca saw less use. The situation became so dire that a philosopher named Aristarchus of Samothrace wrote a letter to Ptolemy III pleading for help. The tone of the letter, which survives today, is shockingly desperate. He says that the scholars are starving and need grain, that many have left the city, and the library is dying. We don't know how the crisis ended, but it must have resolved itself to some extent because Aristarchus went on to become a leading librarian himself. It's easy to think of the Library of Alexandria as a grand institution, and it was. But the people who ran it, the scholars who worked there, and the rulers who funded it were all real people with hopes, fears, dreams, and ambitions. Like us, they tried to do good things and sometimes they failed. They had crises of confidence and moments of despair, and ultimately they were swept up in forces larger than themselves. But it's also a reminder that the library was never finished. No matter how many books you have, there are always more to find, more to read, and more to learn. The Alexandrian Library, a miracle of the ancient world, a grand unified vision of all human knowledge under one roof. Well, let us put aside the fact that such a thing was never really accomplished and that its main purpose was to prop up the ego of a pharaoh. Let's also ignore the fact that it burned down twice. Even if it had worked perfectly from start to finish, it wouldn't have helped you, the average subject of Rome, at all. The Alexandrian library was a daydream, an abstraction, a project whose ambition exceeded its ability to deliver. The Roman Empire, however, cared about results. It didn't have time for dreams. It had an empire to run, and for that, it needed not poets, but administrators, not a single temple of the muses, but a practical, scalable, and exportable system of information. So instead of the idealist fantasy of Alexandria, Rome gave the world the world's first bureaucracy. The air you breathe now is different. It's the crisp, cold air of a Germanic morning, heavy with the smell of wood smoke from the legionary fort's bathhouse and the damp wool of your military cloak. You are a librarius, a scribe and record keeper, attached to the Legio 14 Gemina Marcia Victrix, stationed near the muddy banks of the Rhine River. Your library is not a building of marble and grace. It is a fortified room within the Praetorium, the headquarters building, and its primary holdings are not the works of Homer, but duty rosters, supply inventories, and pay records for 8,000 men. That's right, you work for the military. And military libraries were an organic outgrowth of the army's paperwork needs. The Romans kept detailed records of everything they did, and that included the army. You don't get paid in copper coins, mind you, but in iron. Rome maintained extensive records on its finances, census data, land ownership, trade flows, tax yields, mineral resources, and who owed money to whom. All of these things required record keeping, and so record keepers they had. A military library was basically a glorified office, staffed by scribes and clerks and commanded by a librarius, often a freed slave or a low-ranking soldier. Its job was to maintain 3 sets of books. One set of records, the one stored in armarium. The heavy, lockable chest that serves as your library's core is official. These are the records of your legion, meticulously recording every aspect of its operations, from the rations issued to the shoes replaced, the bridges built and the wine drunk. This is the hard data of the military machine, and it circulates widely across the empire. The records of your legion are not only in this room, but in the archives in Rome and in the copies distributed to other units, the generals and even the emperor himself. Copies of your records go everywhere because knowing how many nails a particular cohort expended on repairs could save lives and resources down the road. Your second set of records is the supplementa, supplementary documents that pertain to your particular unit. These are things like individual soldiers' service records, legal precedents set within the unit, or local laws for places where the legion is stationed. Finally, there's the specialia. These are the odds and ends of camp life, wills, marriage licenses, letters of recommendation. Basically anything that's too miscellaneous for the other 2 categories finds its way into the specialia. But it isn't all quartermaster reports. Even here, on the edge of the civilized world, the Roman desire for a touch of home, for culture, persists. The books you read depend on who's around to read them. If the governor arrives from Rome, then you set out the select books, the De Re Rustica, or agricultural books, the classics, and a few copies of Cicero. He'll expect to see evidence that the frontier isn't just a place of barbarians, and he may well ask you to read him a passage. When he leaves, the erotic novels come out again, along with the poetry and plays. The books you read depend on who's around to read them. If the governor arrives from Rome, then you set out the select books, the De Re Rustica, or agricultural books, the classics, and a few copies of Cicero. He'll expect to see evidence that the frontier isn't just a place of barbarians, and he may well ask you to read him a passage. When he leaves, the erotic novels come out again, along with the poetry and plays. You've finished your report on the lead shipment and file it away. Outside, you can hear the centurions barking orders, the clatter of armor, the sound of the empire going about its business. That business is loud, violent, and messy. But in here, in the quiet of the record room, it is all rendered into neat, orderly lines of text. The Romans weren't systematically malicious. They didn't burn libraries for fun. But the sheer scale of what they were trying to accomplish meant that they routinely lost track of things. And when they did, they sometimes made mistakes. In 43 BC, the Alexandrian library, which was supposed to hold a copy of every book in the world, accidentally set fire to itself by burning a duplicate copy of a double-sided scroll. The Romans weren't systematically malicious. They didn't burn libraries for fun. But the sheer scale of what they were trying to accomplish meant that they routinely lost track of things. And when they did, they sometimes made mistakes. In 43 BC, the Alexandrian library, which was supposed to hold a copy of every book in the world, accidentally set fire to itself by burning a duplicate copy of a double-sided scroll. Like any office, yours is usually short-staffed, underfunded, and behind on its quarterly reports. The imperator has demanded to know the supply levels of every stable in Judea, but your desk is piled high with building contracts from Africa, not to mention the supplementary records for the entire cohort of Praetorian foot soldiers. But the show must go on, so you roll out the wax tablet and dip your quill into the ink. Maybe you're adding an entry to the military ledger. Maybe you're transcribing the latest batch of letters from Rome. Maybe you're copying down the terms of a treaty with a local chieftain. You are surrounded by hundreds, maybe thousands of documents, each one bearing witness to a single moment in time, a moment when an order was given or a decision made or some piece of information was recorded for posterity. You work long after the sun sets, the shadows growing ever larger until the lamplight is the only illumination left. Outside, the steady drone of the camp settles into the night, the murmur of 1,000 conversations drifting through the open window. You pause to listen, the sounds of the empire, its joys and sorrows, its hopes and fears, washing over you. The task of recording it all falls to you, the humble librarian. Historians still argue whether the Roman proliferation of libraries represented a genuine democratization of knowledge, or was merely another form of cultural imperialism, a way to impose Roman paideia, or education, on conquered elites. Was the public library in a place like Ephesus or Timgad a gift of civilization, or a tool for creating compliant, Roman-thinking local rulers? You see both sides of it from your desk. The official manuals on law and administration are tools of control, unquestionably, but the dog-eared copy of Plato's dialogues that a centurion asked you to help him parse, that feels like something else. That feels like a man trying to understand a bigger world than the one contained by the wooden walls of this fort. You dip your quill into the ink, ready to write another page of records, another story in the saga of Rome. What will tomorrow bring? Another treaty, another battle, another dispatch from the emperor himself? You don't know, but you'll be here to record it, to keep the stories alive, to make sure that when the sun rises again, you can tell the centurion what he needs to know. Because in this corner of the empire, on the edge of the civilized world, the real magic of Rome is the stories that live and die in the records, in the libraries, in the scrolls. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Today's topic comes from a viewer suggestion. If you have your own history hot tip, let me know in the comments. And while you do that, consider giving this video a thumbs up. In 476 CE, the last official Roman emperor in the West was deposed, setting off 1,000 years of European history known as the Middle Ages. Now, the term Dark Ages is outdated and offensive, but the idea that Europe in this period suffered cultural and intellectual darkness is not wrong. It's true that a lot of stuff was lost, written works destroyed by barbarians and bureaucrats alike. The iron discipline of Rome crumbled. Its meticulous records succumbed to fire and rot in the slow, forgetful tide of a world fragmenting. The great network of information fractured, and the light of collective knowledge seemed to gutter, threatening to go out entirely. But something else happened, too. While books were being burned and libraries pillaged, an alternative system of documentation and education was born. The air you breathe now is thick, not with dust or bureaucracy, but with the damp chill of stone and the profound, heavy silence of a world fragmenting. The great network of information fractured, and the light of collective knowledge seemed to gutter, threatening to go out entirely. The year is, perhaps, 800 CE, or maybe 950. Time moves differently here. You are a Benedictine monk in a monastery nestled in some rain-lashed northern valley, in the Alps or the Scottish lowlands, and your world has shrunk to the size of this fortified community. The empire is a ghost, a half-remembered story. Your library is no longer a vast hall or an organized archive. It is a single, locked chest in the scriptorium, a room often built to face north for its steady, cool light, and its contents are more precious than the gold reliquary on the altar. You are no longer a scholar or a bureaucrat. You are a scribe, a copyist. Your mission is not to acquire new knowledge, but to save the old. Your weapon is not a stylus or a papyrus scroll, but a goose quill and a stretched sheet of vellum. Your battlefield is this sloping wooden desk, and the enemy is darkness itself. Your day is governed by the divine office, the rhythmic chanting of the hours that structures monastic life. In the deep quiet between lauds and prime, you take your place in the scriptorium, a room often built to face north for its steady, cool light. Your hands are cold, stiff. You warm the inkhorn by holding it close to your body for a moment before you begin. The text before you is a fragment, a crumbling, travel-worn copy of Cicero's De Officiis, a treatise on moral duty, that has somehow survived the long journey from a sun-bleached Italian villa to this gloomy northern outpost. Your task is not to read it for its philosophy, not to debate its ideas. Your task is to replicate it, letter by painstaking letter, in a clear, uniform Carolingian minuscule script. This is the mainstream historical fact of early medieval literacy. The survival of classical knowledge depended entirely on this endless, thankless, manual labor. Monasteries were the hard drives of the Dark Ages, and the monks were the technicians performing the data migration, one character at a time, from a failing format crumbling papyrus to a new, more durable one, parchment codexes. The work is excruciating. A single book, a codex, might take a year or more to complete. Your back aches from hunching over. Your eyes strain in the dim light. The silence is broken only by the scratch of your quill, the occasional cough of a brother, and the soft, rhythmic sound of a pumice stone smoothing the vellum somewhere in the room. This is where we find our quirky, human tidbit. Look at the marginalia. In the pristine, sacred texts, amidst the holy words, the monks would sometimes doodle. They'd draw little caricatures of their irritable abbot in the margin. They'd write complaints in the blank spaces. "Oh, my hand hurts. The ink is thin. Thank God it will soon be dark." And, in one famous example, "I am very cold." It's a humbling reminder that the grand project of preserving Western civilization was undertaken by bored, tired, cold men who probably would have rather been napping. In one particularly delightful instance, a cat, a monastery's essential mouse-catcher, walked across a freshly inked page. The monk, instead of scraping the page clean, simply drew around the paw prints and wrote, in Latin. This is the work of the cat, the sacred and the profane, existing on the same page. Historians still argue whether this monastic copying was a mindless, mechanical process that potentially introduced errors and ossified texts, or a deeply engaged, contemplative act that allowed for subtle textual criticism and even innovation in formatting and commentary. Was the scribe merely a human printing press, or was he, in his quiet way, an editor, a critic? You feel both realities as you work. Much of it is pure muscle memory, the shape of the letters becoming as automatic as breathing. But then you come to a passage that is garbled, where the ink has bled in the original or a word is missing. You must stop. You must think. You must cross-reference with another fragment, if one exists, or make your best guess. In this moment, you are not a copier. You are an editor, a restorer, making a decision that will freeze this version of the text for centuries. The weight of it is immense. You are not just preserving words. You are shaping the very lens through which future generations will see the past. The silence of the scriptorium is not empty. It is thick with the concentration of men who know they are the thin, fragile line between memory and oblivion. You dip your quill again, the only sound in the waiting world. You might wonder why we chose to set this experience in a monastery, in the scriptorium, because these places have such a bad rap. We associate them with dull-witted peasants mindlessly copying books without understanding them. And sure, that does happen, but the picture is far more complex. Monasteries were a microcosm of medieval life, full of interesting people and personalities, people who made decisions about how books were copied and used. The choices those people made are fascinating to historians, because they tell us a lot about medieval culture and society. For example, monasteries didn't just preserve ancient texts, they also created their own manuscripts, and they designed them to reflect their values. They used elaborate illustrations and decorative lettering to make their books beautiful objects that were meant to inspire awe and reverence. These manuscripts, like the Book of Kells, show us the creativity and skill of medieval artists and scribes, and they were also practical tools for learning and teaching, used in everything from religious services to legal proceedings. So while it's true that monks copied books in the scriptorium, they were doing so for a variety of reasons and with a variety of techniques. Their work wasn't just about preserving the past, it was also about shaping the present and future. We hope that you enjoyed experiencing a day in the life of a scribe in a medieval monastery. You are a monk of a great monastery in northern Italy in the early medieval period. Days pass in prayer, in study, in copying manuscripts. Life is orderly, serene, holy, but in the shadows, change is stirring. The world beyond your monastery's walls is slowly, inexorably changing. Trade routes are stretching, cities are growing, and a new, restless energy is stirring in the universities of Bologna and Paris. The silent, sacred work of the scriptorium remains, but it is no longer the sole guardian of the word. A new technology is arriving, not with a fanfare, but on the quiet backs of merchants and diplomats. The thing you're holding is old. Well, maybe not this exact thing, because this is a present-day replica of an 8th century Irish manuscript, but the kind of thing you would hold is older than anything you have ever seen. The alphabet, letters carved in wood or cut from bone, are ancient echoes of the Roman Empire. Parchment is animal skin stretched tight across a wooden board, a surface for the stylus. For wax tablets, things that you would recognize if you went back far enough in history. But in the Carolingian period, there are two kinds of thing you might hold, a book or a page. Books were still rare, precious objects. They were also large, unwieldy, and they leaked ink. Pages were the solution, sheets of papyrus or parchment, bound together along one side and folded into a convenient booklet shape. They allowed scholars to write freely without fear of spilling something vital. But they were temporary things. Once the scholar was done with a particular topic or text, they were rolled up, put away, and soon forgotten. You are a monk of a great monastery in northern Italy in the 9th century. The scriptorium buzzes with the scratch of quills and the rustle of parchment, the smell of drying ink, the feel of a firm, smooth surface beneath your pen, the weight of a heavy tome resting on your lap are all things you are accustomed to. But these things are not eternal. In the 7th century, when this book was made, the supplies for a scriptorium were simple: parchment, ink, quills, glue, bone folders, knives and weights. The rest was human labor. A community of monks copied texts for the glory of God, creating an exquisite, irreplaceable object. These books were treasures, to be treasured, to be guarded, and above all, to be read aloud. As you turn the page, you catch sight of your fellow monks in the scriptorium, the light catching their shaved heads as they bend over their work, their voices murmuring in unison. Creating a book by hand takes days, weeks, months. It takes dozens of people, and once the finished book leaves the scriptorium, it will rarely be seen again. It will go on display in the chapter house, be paraded around the cloister for a special service, and then it will go back to the shelves, only to be pulled out years or decades later for another display, another service. The outside world changes, kingdoms rise and fall, towns become cities, trade routes bloom, new technologies arrive. You don't notice any of it. You are hidden away in the monastery, cut off from the clamor and commerce of the modern world. But slowly, imperceptibly, those changes creep inside. First, a splinter group breaks away from the main order. Their leader is charismatic, their mission is urgent, their goal is bold, to preach the Christian gospel to the pagan north. They won't be able to do everything the main order does, so they simplify. They get rid of the bells and the elaborate rituals. They dispense with grand works of art and music. They abandon, yes, even the lavish illuminated manuscripts. They still need texts, of course, but in the simplest, cheapest form possible. No longer will monks spend months painting borders. They need to keep making copies of important books. But the ones that are meant to be used by missionaries traveling through the wild places must be small, durable, and above all, cheap. Parchment is expensive. It takes the hides of sheep, the labor of a specialist, and a lot of time. So the missionaries settle for something else, cheap and plentiful, made from the rags of linen cloth, water, and a lot of very hard work. Papered now, you aren't a monk anymore. You are a stationer, a bookseller, operating from a small stall near the burgeoning university in Bologna. The year is the late 13th century and the air in your workspace is a chaotic mixture of scents. The pungent sulfurous smell of boiling rags from the paper mill downstream, the rich familiar odor of leather for bindings, and the sharp metallic tang of iron gall ink. You are no longer a monk, but the space you work in and the things you use bring you closer to the scriptorium than you ever imagined. The thing in your hand is new. Well, maybe not this exact thing, because this is a replica of a late medieval book made in Italy. But the kind of thing you are holding is something that didn't exist 200 years ago. You run your fingers over the spine, remembering that this is your doing. The cover is plain, but underneath beats the heart of this book, the heart of the paper revolution. For the first time, knowledge is not held captive by the elite few. It's not chained up in monasteries, cathedrals, and palaces. It's here in your hands. It's portable, it's affordable, and it's not going anywhere fast. You live in a world of chaos. Drunken students, rowdy nobles, assassination attempts on popes. You huddle in your shop as rioters rampage past. And when it's over, you look out to see what damage they have done. The windows of your competitors are smashed, but your stall is untouched. Why? Because you are not selling Bibles and legal codes. You are selling the works of Ovid and Aristotle. You are selling knowledge, And the only thing people want more than knowledge is power. The destruction of a printing press may make headlines. It may shock the world. But the world keeps turning. New presses will be built. New texts will be printed. The explosion of the Gutenberg Bible was a turning point, yes. But the printing press was not the first disruptive technology in the history of books. The knowledge contained within this book is the same as that one, and yet the world is vastly different. The letter is the same, but the situation has changed. If you had asked the master of a scriptorium in the 8th century what he wanted most, he would have answered more time, more money, more skilled workers. But if you ask a stationer in the late Middle Ages, he will tell you that he just wants things left him alone. Stop sending him angry letters demanding he wrap his filthy books in clean linen because they've brought plague and pestilence to your town. Stop fining him for selling unauthorized translations of the classics. Stop arresting him for selling heretical books. Leave me alone, he'll say, and let me sell my paper. And the world would be better off if you did. The quaint little medieval market square is crowded. Students weave between shoppers. Vendors hawk their wares. In the center stands a makeshift gallows. The stationer hangs limp and dead, murdered by an irate cleric upset at the spread of forbidden books. This story happened to Matteo Ricci, a real Italian bookseller who sold the works of the philosopher Averroes. Those works were considered heretical by the Dominican friar who had Ricci arrested, beaten and finally hanged. His murder is why the place you're standing in is called the Mercato Vecchio, or Old Market. This isn't fiction. This is history, and it's history you haven't learned anywhere else. You are a lowly scribe, sitting in a cramped room, candlelight glinting off the iron tip of your quill. Outside, the sounds of life are muffled by the thick walls. You hear the distant rumble of traffic, the splash of a fountain, the laughter and shouts of children playing in the street. All around you are books. Some are old and crumbling, others are newer and tighter bound. Each one is a testament to the patient work of people like you, scribe, copying the works of great thinkers, preserving the words of saints and scholars. But you are not a monk. You don't live in a monastery. You don't copy books for God. You copy them for money. You work in a shop. You have a name, face and personality. You are an individual. You are a person. And this is the dawn of the Renaissance. Welcome back to the shop. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we are going to step into a historical recreation of a Renaissance library and learn about the bookseller's workbench, specifically the bookbinding supplies that we would find in such a space. Before we jump into our project, let's take a moment to support our channel through our membership platform. If you'd like to support us in creating these videos, please consider becoming a member. We've got some fun perks to say thank you. Okay, so the commercial hum of the university bookstall fades and is replaced by a different, more imposing atmosphere. You have ascended the social ladder of knowledge. You are no longer a mere stationer. You are the bibliothecarius, the librarian of a newly endowed Renaissance library, perhaps attached to a wealthy merchant's palazzo or a powerful cardinal's household. The year is the early 1500s, and the air in your domain is a complex cocktail of smells. The rich polished scent of oak from the new built-in shelves that line the walls, the waxy aroma of beeswax, used to protect the leather bindings, and a faint lingering hint of the fresh mortar used to secure the heavy iron chains that are the defining feature of this room. You walk between the reading desks, your footsteps echoing on the stone floor, and the soft, metallic clinking of chains follows you like a ghost. Your primary duty is preservation and control, not access. The library is a symbol of its owner's wealth, piety, and intellect, a private treasure to be shown off to important guests, not a public utility. The readers who are granted entry, a select group of scholars, clerics, and noblemen, do not roam the shelves. They consult a master catalog. You retrieve the heavy volume from its designated spot, and you physically secure the chain attached to a metal rod on the book, as covered to a corresponding rod on the reading desk. The chain is just long enough to allow the book to be lifted and read, but not long enough to be carried to a window or, God forbid, out the door. This practice of chaining libraries, particularly in Oxford and Cambridge colleges, is the mainstream historical fact of this era, a perfect physical manifestation of the tension between the desire to collect knowledge and the fear of its dissemination. The book is physically tethered to the institution that owns it, its ideas kept on a very short, very literal leash. But even in this rigid, controlled environment, human nature and its quirky tendencies find a way. The library, for all its chains, is not a sterile place. It's a living room, a study, and a status symbol, And with that comes a host of bizarre and wonderfully mundane problems. Your daily rounds involve more than just dusting. You are constantly dealing with the evidence of your privileged readers. You find wax drippings from their candles on the reading desks. You find crumbs from their meals nestled in the gutters of the pages. You have to gently scrape off blobs of sealing wax that they've thoughtlessly dropped onto the wooden surfaces. There are even accounts from library records of the time of librarians having to shoo away the household pets, a cardinal's favorite lapdog, or a prized hunting bird that their masters would bring into the library. Creatures that saw the beautifully tanned leather bindings as excellent objects for sharpening claws or beaks. The most dangerous threat to the collection wasn't always theft. It was the messy, distracted, and entitled habits of the very people who were allowed to use it. In addition to the basics that we learned in Bookbinding 101, your bookbinding toolkit as a Renaissance librarian will include some specialized tools for dealing with the messes that people make while trying to read chained books. Let's get to work. Step 1. Remove any debris from the surface of the desk with a soft brush. In my case, I'm using an old toothbrush. Step 2. Heat a metal scraper until it is glowing hot and use it to carefully scrape off the sealing wax. Be careful not to press too hard and damage the wood underneath. Once the surface is clean, it's time to buff it with a soft cloth to restore the shine. Now that the desk is looking nearly brand new, let's move on to the books themselves. Chain books need to be cleaned just like any others, but you need to take extra care when dealing with the chains. Start by wiping down the covers with a damp cloth to remove any dust or debris. Be gentle and don't soak the covers in water. For stubborn stains, apply a small amount of mild soap and continue wiping. Again, be gentle and avoid getting the book's interior wet. When you reach the chain, use a dry cloth and handle it with care to prevent any rust formation. For heavily soiled chains, you can make a simple cleaning paste using baking soda and water. Apply the paste to the chain using a soft brush and let it sit for a few minutes. Then use a clean, dry cloth to wipe off the residue and polish the chain until it shines. The final step is to polish the leather on the book covers. You can do this using a leather conditioner or a simple mixture of olive oil and vinegar. Apply the conditioner with a soft cloth and rub it into the leather until it is fully absorbed. This will help keep the leather from drying out and cracking over time. Now the book is clean and ready to go back on the shelf. These tasks, performed day in and day out, become part of your daily routine. The soft scrape of the wax scraper on wood, the squeak of the chains as you hook and unhook them from the reading desks, the smell of leather and beeswax, all of it is a lullaby that rocks you into a kind of meditative state. The books in your charge are more than just objects. They are talismans of power, knowledge, and untold stories. Their chains, far from being instruments of repression, are tokens of their value, each link a testament to the belief that some things are too precious to be free. The library, for all its opulence and exclusivity, is also a quiet rebel against the casualness of the modern world. In a time when attention is a currency traded recklessly, it offers a space where quiet contemplation and the deep engagement with ideas are not just encouraged, they are the only possible activity. As you straighten a volume on the shelf, you think about how many hands have touched this book before yours, how many eyes have scanned its pages. It is a legacy that you, the humble bibliothecarius, play an essential role in preserving. You are the gatekeeper of stories, the custodian of ideas, and in this grand library of chains, you find a strange kind of freedom in the very act of keeping things chained. We hope you enjoyed this look at what a bookseller's workbench might have looked like in the world of the early Renaissance. To learn more about this time period, we've linked some resources in the description box below. And if you're interested in learning more about the art of bookbinding, we'll have some relevant videos linked there as well. We want to extend a special thank you to our supporters whose names you can see on screen right now. If you'd like to join our amazing community of supporters, please visit our membership platform. Okay, friends, it's time to start thinking about our next video, so leave your suggestions in the comments below. What other historical jobs would you like to try on for size? What other time periods are you curious about? We can't wait to see what you come up with. Until then, remember, don't just take my word for it. Go explore history for yourself. And now, Great Moments in Libraries, Part 2. The metallic chill of the chain. The hushed, reverential silence of the private collection. These things are swept away by a new sound, a new energy. It is the sound of argument, of pages turning not in solitary contemplation but in fervent debate, punctuated by the clink of a coffee cup and the rustle of a newspaper. The year is 1753, and you are no longer a warden of a chained collection. You are a patron, a citizen, and you are walking up the steps of the British Museum in London. The air is thick with the smell of rain-damp wool coats, the nutty aroma of roasting coffee from a nearby tavern, and the exciting, slightly illicit scent of snuff. You are here to visit the library. But this is not a library that belongs to a king or a cardinal, according to the Act of Parliament that created it. This library belongs to the studious and curious persons of the nation. You are one of them. The door is open. You step inside. This is the Enlightenment's grand bargain, the birth of the public library as an institution. The idea is radical, almost subversive, that knowledge should not be hoarded but shared, that a nation's intellectual strength depends on the education and engagement of its people, not just its elite. The mainstream historical fact here is the model itself. This isn't a lending library yet. You can't take the books home, but you can come here, for free, and read them. The collection is built not by royal decree, but by the bequest of a man named Sir Hans Sloane, a physician whose vast collection of books, manuscripts, and curiosities formed the nucleus of the museum and its library. To gain entry, you must apply for a ticket. It feels official, but the gatekeepers are not checking your pedigree, only your stated purpose. The room you enter is grand, with high ceilings and natural light from large windows. The books are still behind barriers, but they are not chained. They are requested from attendants who fetch them from the shelves. It is a system built on trust, or at least on the watchful eyes of the staff. The atmosphere is one of quiet but intense sociability. This is the quirky, human heart of the early public library. It is a place to see and be seen, to overhear conversations, to engage in the intellectual commerce of the day. The readers are a mix of sober scholars, ambitious clerks, and fiery pamphleteers, and they are not always quiet. The library's own records from the time are filled with complaints about the patrons themselves. There are repeated, frustrated notices forbidding patrons from cutting, tearing, or otherwise defacing the materials, suggesting a problem with people literally taking scissors to newspapers to clip articles they wanted to keep. Other rules sternly warn against using pen and ink near the books, as a spilled inkwell could destroy a priceless volume. But the most wonderfully specific complaints are about personal habits. The librarians constantly had to admonish readers for snuff-taking. That resulted in a fine brown dust settling over everything and for falling asleep, and snoring loudly in the reading chairs, much to the annoyance of their studious neighbors. The dream of a rational, enlightened public space was constantly being tested by the messy, nap-prone, sneeze-inducing reality of the public itself. Historians still argue whether these early public institutions truly lived up to their democratic ideals. Was the studious and curious public really everyone, or was it a code for the respectable, the literate, and the male? The application process, while a formality for a gentleman, could be a daunting barrier for a working-class autodidact. The very architecture of these places, their grandeur and formality, could be subtly exclusionary, silently communicating who truly belonged within these halls of knowledge. Was this genuine democratization or merely the expansion of the elite circle to include the professional middle class? You sit at a long oak desk, the requested volume of Locke's essays before you. Around you, you hear the low murmur of conversation, the rustle of a silk waistcoat, the earnest scratching of a quill. It feels open, it feels new, but you also sense the invisible lines, the unspoken rules of decorum that govern who feels comfortable here. The chains are gone from the books, but have they truly been lifted from the minds of the people? The library has made a promise to the public, a promise of access and equality. It is a revolutionary promise, and like all revolutions, its full implementation will be messy, contested, and slower than its idealistic founders ever imagined. The door is open, but the journey across the threshold is just beginning. You ray here with us in the British Library's glorious 18th century reading room, because we've opened a new chapter in our partnership. We're launching a series of original animated shorts, all set in the incomparable setting of the King's Library. It's a place charged with history, where the past and present come together in unexpected ways, and we want you to be part of this extraordinary journey. The first story we're sharing takes you back to the days when this library was housed in a manor in Wimbledon Park, an oasis of calm amidst the urban sprawl of southwest London. Follow me as I explore the grounds, unraveling the hidden stories they hold. But we're just getting started. Over the coming months, we'll be sharing more stories from the past through animation, artifacts, and living history. Join us every month for new adventures. Each experience offers a unique way to connect with history, inspiring you with stories of discovery, creativity, and the enduring power of the human spirit. from solving ancient mysteries to creating works of art. Each adventure invites you to explore the boundless possibilities that await when we unlock the secrets of the past. Let the games begin. In 1759, a physician named Thomas Jenner attended to a patient with smallpox, a ravaging disease that humanity had known for thousands of years. He noticed that the milkmaids who worked on his dairy farm seemed immune to the deadly illness. This observation led him to inoculate a young boy with cowpox, a milder disease found in cows, hoping it would protect him from smallpox. It worked. Jenner's discovery of the vaccine would go on to save countless lives, forever altering our relationship with disease. This is just one of the groundbreaking moments in health and medicine that we'll be exploring in a brand new exhibition opening in July. The show will highlight pivotal discoveries and innovations that have shaped our world, from the invention of the microscope to the development of antibiotics and vaccines. It's a journey through time that will inspire awe and wonder, allowing visitors to witness the incredible progress that has been made in our understanding of the human body and the development of life-saving treatments. One of the most fascinating exhibits will be the vaccine box, a portable kit used in the late 18th century to carry vaccines for those traveling to far-flung corners of the globe. These kits played a vital role in the fight against disease, enabling medical professionals to deliver life-saving vaccines to those who needed them most. Visitors will also have the chance to learn about the pioneering work of scientists and medical professionals who risked their lives and reputations to advance our understanding of health and medicine. Their stories of courage and determination will inspire visitors to consider the human cost of scientific progress and the importance of pushing boundaries in the face of adversity. Vaccines have saved millions of lives and eradicated deadly diseases like smallpox. The development of antibiotics revolutionized the treatment of bacterial infections, and advancements in surgery and anesthesia have enabled medical professionals to perform life-saving procedures that were once thought impossible. Through it all, the spirit of inquiry, innovation, and compassion has remained constant. As you walk through the exhibition, you'll feel inspired by the incredible achievements of those who have dedicated their lives to improving the health and well-being of others. So mark your calendars for July and join us at the museum to experience this groundbreaking exhibition for yourself. It's a journey through time that will stay with you long after you've stepped foot inside. See you there. The Great Library of Alexandria never looked like this. This is what it looked like. And while its contents are legendary, it wasn't really a library at all, more like a bookstore/archive attached to a museum. Its biggest advantage was proximity to the seat of Ptolemaic power, so kings and scholars alike could grab a scroll and get to work. You see, this model worked pretty well for several centuries. There were plenty of books, the most important ones at that, and any scholar who couldn't afford to buy their own could access them with a nominal fee. By medieval times, though, these royal collections were becoming way too valuable to let commoners loose inside. Scholars were lucky if they could even get near them, let alone use them. The great abbey libraries of the Middle Ages did start to resemble something closer to our modern concept of a public lending library. But the truth is, these were still very much private collections, generally only accessible to monks, clergy, and upper-level students at the universities that grew up around them. So when you think about how many people spent hundreds of years trying to crack the door open to these places, it is hard to overstate just how revolutionary it felt when the first truly public library opened its doors in 1824. Well, except in Scotland, 1796. Depends on how you define public, I guess. Anyway, this was the dawn of the modern public library. The quiet, gentlemanly reading room of the British Museum feels a world away. Now, you are standing on a grand staircase, your neck craned to take in a vaulted ceiling that seems as high as the sky. The year is 1897, and you are in the new Library of Congress building in Washington, D.C., a palace of knowledge built for a nation coming into its own. Or perhaps you're in the reading room of the British Museum's new domed rotunda. The air is different here. It smells of ozone from the newly installed electric lights, of lemon oil used on acres of polished brass and mahogany, and of the cool, mineral scent of stone and marble. Patrons enter the reading room and their footsteps echo on the marble floor. Librarians glide between rows of tables stacked with leather-bound books, each one whispering stories of faraway lands and long-ago lives. Sunlight streams through arched windows, illuminating motes dancing in the air and casting long shadows from the stacks. Looming in the corner, the air buzzes with quiet energy, a symphony of turning pages and murmured conversations. It is a place of hushed reverence, a sanctuary for those seeking wisdom or adventure. And this is where you come to explore the boundless realms of imagination and knowledge. The most important word here is free. Welcome to the magical realm of literature. In the mid-19th century, the whole concept of public libraries seemed downright radical. In reality, people did not flock to these hallowed halls right away. To prove the point, check out the attendance numbers for the New York Public Library during its first few months. The grand opening drew a crowd, but after that, people mostly stayed away until the system started offering free books to take home. That didn't stop people from marveling at the design of these magnificent buildings. Behold the Crystal Palace of Information, a triumph of Victorian architecture. At least that's what people called it. But if you were actually using the library, you probably cared more about this. See, this was the card catalog, the gateway to millions of resources. Back in the day, before fancy databases and search engines, this was how you found stuff. All those books you see lining the shelves, yeah, they had cards for those. Each book had two main cards, one with info about the book itself and another with info about the subject matter. Those subject cards sat in alphabetical drawers, and finding the info you needed required patience and skill. Oh, and don't forget about the interlibrary loan. If the book you wanted wasn't in your local library, you could fill out a form requesting it from another library. But wait, there's more. Sometimes you wouldn't find the book you wanted in the card catalog at all. Why? Because some folks weren't too keen on lending out rare or controversial books. Ah, yes, censorship. A librarian would read the requested book, decide if it was okay to lend out, and if so, put a card in the catalog. But if not, they'd mark it as restricted and keep it out of the public eye. In the end, finding a book was quite the adventure. It was like a treasure hunt where the rules kept changing. Ah, and the added challenge of navigating the labyrinthine stacks. Good luck finding your way out of there without a guide. But hey, if you were really stuck, there was always the helpful staff ready to assist. Yep, it was a simpler time for sure. You push your way through the double doors and step into the reading room. Sunlight streaming in from above. Everywhere around you, books line the walls, creating an atmosphere of quiet contemplation. People of all ages are here, students poring over textbooks, professionals researching their fields, and curious minds simply looking to explore. The air is thick with the smell of old paper and leather, and the only sound is the rustle of turning pages. As you walk deeper into the room, you notice intricate details everywhere. Carvings along the frieze depicting scenes from mythology and history, stained glass windows telling stories of their own. And then you see him, the librarian, a pillar of wisdom and order in this sea of knowledge. He greets everyone with a warm smile, ready to guide them on their literary journeys. You approach the card catalog, a vast labyrinth of knowledge organized with military precision. You pull out a drawer and run your fingers along the neatly ranged cards, each one a portal to a different world. You spot a card for a book on mythology and pull it out, noting the call number with care. Then you make your way to the shelves, following the numbers until you locate the book. As you open it, you feel a sense of wonder. Every page holds the potential for adventure, for discovery. And as you lose yourself in the text, you realize this library is more than just a building. It's a gateway to infinite possibilities. This is the Victorian Reading Room, a place where past and present collide and the future beckons. The smell of coal smoke lingers in the air, mingling with the scent of aged paper and polished wood. Sunlight streams through large windows, illuminating swirling dust particles and casting dramatic shadows on the floor. On one side stands the majestic card catalog, a labyrinth of knowledge waiting to be explored. Behind it, towering shelves hold countless volumes, their spines a testament to ages past. Soft light filters through stained glass windows, bathing the room in hues of amber and ruby. Comfortable armchairs invite weary minds to rest, while globe-studded tables encourage world travelers to gather and share their tales. The air buzzes with activity as scholars discuss their findings, students pore over ancient texts, and adventurers seek new horizons. At the center of it all sits the librarian, a keeper of stories with twinkling eyes and a mischievous grin. He tends to his domain with quiet pride, ensuring that every visitor finds the tale they seek. Whether you yearn for lost civilizations, fantastical beasts, or timeless love stories, this reading room holds them all. Here amidst the scent of adventure, let your journey begin. What if I told you there was a place where time stood still, where the scent of old books mingled with the whispers of forgotten lore? Welcome to the reading room, where reality faded into the background and all that mattered was the story unfolding before your very eyes. Imagine stepping into a place where time itself seemed to slow down, where the world outside ceased to exist and you were left suspended in a realm of pure imagination. Encased within the fortress of solid stone, this sanctuary boasted towering ceilings that kissed the heavens and arched windows that poured in soft, golden light. Rows upon rows of bookshelves lined the walls, holding countless tales from across the ages. The air was thick with the musty aroma of aged paper and leather, a scent that spoke of countless adventures waiting to be rediscovered. Sunlight streamed through the expansive windows, weaving intricate patterns on the floor and illuminating motes dancing in the stillness. As you wandered through the aisles, each footstep echoed softly, a gentle reminder that you were treading in the footsteps of literary giants. The silence was not oppressive, but rather comforting, a hushed reverence that allowed your own thoughts to roam freely. It was a space where the busy hum of daily life was replaced by the soft rustle of turning pages, and the murmur of fellow book lovers engrossed in their own literary journeys. Ah, and let us not forget the librarian, a venerable figure who presided over this realm of knowledge with quiet dignity. His eyes twinkled with wisdom, and his gentle guidance ensured that every visitor found the stories they sought. Whether you desired tales of daring adventure, heart-wrenching romance, or profound philosophical musings, he knew just where to lead you. The reading room was more than just a place to borrow books. It was a sanctuary for the mind, a refuge from the storms of everyday life and a portal to infinite worlds. It was a testament to the enduring power of literature and the magic that unfolds when one opens a book and lets the words carry them away. They say only two certainties in life, death and taxes. But there's a third, at least here in America. Rich dudes with too much money trying to buy love. I'm looking at you, Jeff Bezos. You know, old Jeff. I'll save my criticisms of Jeff for another day. Today's benefactor is infinitely more interesting, and his methods far more subtle. Meet Andrew Carnegie. That's Scottish, Irish, maybe German. Actually, he's all of those things. Born in Dunfermline, Scotland, he was the son of a handloom weaver who fled religious persecution in Ireland. When he was 12, his family emigrated to the United States and settled in Allegheny, Pennsylvania. From an early age, he worked in factories, starting as a bobbin boy, then later as a messenger, and finally as a general office boy. By the time he turned 23, he was superintendent of all the departments at the largest telegraph company in Pittsburgh, a job that paid $18 a week. Eventually, he moved on to bigger things, specifically railroads. He became an engineer and manager for the Pennsylvania Railroad, and by age 34 was a major shareholder. After getting involved in a serious fistfight over business interests, Carnegie went into the steel industry, where he developed a superior process for making steel cheaply and in mass. He used this fortune to become a titan of industry, a shrewd businessman and aggressive union buster. He built his empire on the backs of working people, but he didn't like to see those same people banding together to ask for better treatment. He brutally crushed strikes at his factories and claimed the right to hire and fire without interference, even going so far as to outfit his factories with private Pinkerton security forces and set up fake towns near his factories, where he could control every aspect of his employees' lives. In a word, he was a monster. That said, he was a monster with a heart of gold. No, seriously, he gave away $350 million during his lifetime, the modern equivalent of around $12 billion, which makes him the biggest philanthropist in American history, possibly world history. Not to mention he funded the building of 2,500 libraries worldwide and 64 in Scotland alone. Not to mention pensions for miners, music festivals, university chairs, and more. He was a force for good, with one major exception. Carnegie was a racist, and he applied his racism in an arguably more insidious way than most. He hated everyone equally. He hated blacks, Chinese, whites, Catholics, Protestants, you name it. Carnegie wasn't motivated by bigotry, but by paternalism, and he expressed it not with violence, but with well-meaning condescension. There's the rub. Carnegie's genius was recognizing that he could never directly impose his worldview on people, but he could get them to do it to themselves through institutions he funded. It's a brilliant strategy. You want a performing arts center in town? I'll build it. Just include a clause in your contract requiring that the hall only ever host wholesome entertainment approved by a board of local elders. Want a new fire station? Sure, I'll foot the bill. But we need a rule that any non-Christian clergy members must be banned from addressing the town from their pulpit. And at the heart of Carnegie's empire of soft coercion were, of course, the libraries. His goal with these gifts was never simply to provide towns with an amenity they wanted. It was to give them exactly the type of library he envisioned, and ensure they ran it exactly the way he wanted. This required more than just writing checks. Carnegie understood the art of soft persuasion. While he had no interest in running the libraries himself, he made it clear that he did have a personal interest in their operation, and implied that any deviation from his standards could jeopardize future funding. The issue was how to instill his vision for libraries in the communities he was funding. Enter Melville Dewey. Dewey was born in 1851 in Vermont and grew up in the Erie Canal town of North Tonawanda, New York. As a teenager, he attended a talk given by British social reformer Lord Shaftesbury about the value of public education. Something about this talk changed Dewey forever. It instilled in him a passion for social reform that lasted his whole life. But Dewey wasn't satisfied to follow in Shaftesbury's footsteps. He wanted to organize the world. The first thing he did was create a card catalog for the birds he saw outside his window. Next, he organized his father's collection of 200 Masonic books, creating a classification system that worked by assigning numbers to subjects. Then he put his skills to the test. At 19, he walked into Amherst College and asked if he could organize their library. When they agreed, he spent a year cataloging and reclassifying everything. It was a success. The next year, Columbia University hired him to reorganize their library. Dewey quickly rose to the position of head librarian, and it wasn't long before his peers across the country noticed his work. In 1876, he was invited to speak about his revolutionary new method of organizing libraries at a conference in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Here, among other things, he debuted his famous decimal system. By 1878, he was in charge of the American Library Association, and from this position he began his crusade to shape libraries across the country. His goals were twofold. First, he wanted to apply scientific management to libraries. That meant analyzing exactly how people use libraries to find the best locations for things like card catalogs, the Dewey Decimal System that bears his name, and even the best layout of bookshelves. Second, he wanted to make libraries as useful as possible. Dewey believed that a library's value came down to one simple measurement: circulation. To measure circulation, you needed strict rules about how materials were organized. People knew exactly where to find the books they wanted and were less likely to check out something they weren't expecting to read because it was shelved in the wrong place. It was a lot like Carnegie's idea of elevating the masses through self-help. Only Carnegie thought self-improvement was aspirational while Dewey thought it was mandatory. So when Carnegie was looking for someone to help mold public libraries across the country, according to his vision, Dewey was the obvious choice. Dewey was delighted. He was about to revolutionize American culture through the organization of books. He just needed to deal with the pesky reality that people like different types of books. How could he make sure that hillbillies in Podunk, Montana had access to uplifting literature, as Carnegie demanded, without imposing his own tastes on them? What he needed was a system. So let's go back to that town hall meeting. Your fellow citizens are arguing about whether or not they can afford a library. Their decision will change their town forever. But how will it affect you personally? Well, it depends. Are you an avid reader? Do you rely on libraries to keep you entertained? Or are you indifferent to reading? You're about to lose the fight of your life and you don't even know it. If you're a voracious reader, especially of popular fiction, you've probably realized that something's missing. It's me. I'm sorry I'm late. I got lost in a good book. I couldn't put it down. Don't worry, I won't do that again. I promise. Unless I found another really good book, then I'll be back. So sorry. Listen, I get that this show might seem a bit different. We're talking about a topic that at first glance doesn't seem very lighthearted, but trust me, there's plenty of fun to be had here. Besides, wouldn't you agree that a really good story is worth telling no matter what the topic? Anyway, if you're watching this episode in the summer of 2023, then you're in luck because Nebula just released a ton of exclusive content, including my special miniseries, The Mystery of the Vanishing Hitchhikers. Join us for tales of strange encounters on the open road, mysterious road closures, and hitchhikers who may not be who they seem. Plus, there's bonus material from all your favorite creators like me, MKBHD, Low Stakes Gamer, and more, all for the price of a couple of coffees. And for a limited time, new annual subscribers will receive a free tote bag with a design by one of our artists. Before you are piles of books, mountains of paperbacks, enough novels to stock a small town's library. Where did they all come from? They came from here, from every house in the county, from the church basement, from the school library, from the drugstore, from the doctor's office. Every public space became a collection point. Every citizen became a contributor. For many, this was a chance to clear out the clutter, to get rid of books that sat unread on shelves. For others, it was a chance to part with volumes that held too many memories, too much sorrow. In the end, there were too many books, more than anyone could ever read, more than anyone could ever imagine reading. So you must sort them. Decide which will go to the soldiers overseas and which will go to the training camps. Do you really think it matters? Some camp somewhere needs something to read. The crisp world of the Carnegie Library, with its hushed voices and polished floors, seems impossibly distant. In its place, the musty, cluttered basement of a repurposed civic building. Outside, the world is roaring, the engines of war. Inside, you try to organize the chaos. How can one building hold so many books? How can so many people have so many books? Does anyone even read anymore? It's easy to get lost in this mountain range of paperbacks. There are whole valleys of forgotten classics, canyons of pulp adventure. Here, a copy of Oliver Twist, its yellowed pages smelling faintly of pipe tobacco. There, a dog-eared copy of Treasure Island with a neatly folded page marker made from a newspaper's funny S. Each book tells its own story. This one, with its faded scarlet cover, The Scarlet Pimpernel, has traveled with a soldier across Europe. It is tucked inside a worn duffel bag. Alongside it, a half-empty pack of cigarettes and a crumpled picture of a girl with flowing hair and a mischievous smile. What did she mean to him? What did the book mean? Who is he? The soldier? You don't know, but soon you won't have to wonder. Someone else's story will fill your thoughts. The logistics of this project are baffling, almost as baffling as the war raging outside. First, the collections organized by local committees, door-to-door efforts, truckloads of books gathered from schools, churches, businesses. Then, shockingly, the sorting. Books are separated by genre, quality, and suitability for a GI. The fate of millions of books hangs on your decisions. What goes to the soldiers on the front lines and what goes to those waiting to be deployed? Which books are suitable for the darkest days of combat and which are better suited for quiet evenings in the barracks? How do you judge a book in such a moment? Is Dracula okay for the front lines? Is the Jungle Book appropriate for a soldier's son? You have no answers. There are none to be found. All you can do is your best. The work is surprisingly tedious, surprisingly difficult, surprisingly sad. Why do they want us to do this? Volunteers ask each other this question. Why would anyone donate a book they once loved to be cut, mutilated, shipped away? The answer is twofold. First, it is about giving the troops a little pleasure. Second, it is about the book itself. It may not return, but it can help. That's what the pamphlets say from the American Library Association, from the Victory Book Campaign. These groups are the driving force behind the project, coordinating thousands of volunteers across the country, trying to make sense of the mountain ranges of donated books. On one side, a passionate plea for books, clean and wholesome and uplifting. On the other, a blunt assessment of the situation. Please send books that are easy to read and will cheer them up. Avoid controversial or depressing subjects. The troops are young and impressionable. Be careful. So you must sort through volumes that have nothing to do with war, with the conflicts raging in Europe and the Pacific. No histories, no political science textbooks, no manuals on weaponry or strategy. Instead, plenty of adventure stories, Western novels, plenty of true crime and sensation fiction. Yes, even the lurid tales of murder and mayhem are considered patriotic if they're easily consumable. Soldiers have neither the time nor the energy for literary seriousness. If they pick up a book, they want to be entertained, distracted, maybe even titillated. Leave the uplift to the preachers. Leave the propaganda to the politicians. Leave the seriousness to the pundits. Here, the only agenda is distraction. The task before you suddenly feels monumental. You know you are making a difference, but how much of a difference? The questions follow you home at night. Do the soldiers even read these books? Are they just kindling for a lonely fire? Or worse, packing material for yet another shipment? The answer, when it comes, surprises you. It comes in letters, handwritten notes folded into tiny rectangles, slipped into the pages of a book, tucked inside the cover of a cookbook, slid under the dust jacket of a novel. You can't know which books will end up where, but you can trust the soldiers, and their letters speak for themselves. The latest installment of a popular detective series has reached Private James O'Reilly in his camp in Louisiana. He writes of his delight, of how the mystery lifted his spirits on a cold Louisiana night. Not far from him, Private John Riley reads Zane Grey's To the Last Man. He writes of the beauty of the language, the thrill of the plot, and in a clearing on the New Jersey Pine Barrens, Private Joseph Smith devours a dog-eared copy of the Virginian. He speaks of the power of the story, how it makes him feel connected to the land and to himself. The books travel cross-country, across oceans. They build worlds that are temporarily more solid than the one the soldiers inhabit. They provide stories, characters, plots, adventures that are as real as anything the soldiers will encounter. In their letters, they thank you for sending these books, for helping them escape the present, for reminding them of the past, for giving them hope for the future. In the midst of carnage, a book is more than paper and ink. It is a bulwark against madness. You hear this in the letters, see it in the annotations, feel it in the care with which the books are handled. Wartime paperbacks are like talismans, shielding the reader from the world, allowing them to breathe, to dream, to hope. What started as a project to dispose of old books becomes a lifeline to another world. You are part of this, even if you don't realize it. Because when the soldiers write these letters, they aren't just thanking some faceless organization. They're thanking you. You are the ones who put these books in boxes, who decided which story went where. You are the conduit of a little happiness, a brief distraction from a world gone mad. You are the unseen hands that reach across the battlefield, carrying books and stories to those who need them most. You are part of a network of readers, donors, librarians, soldiers and storytellers who believe that even in the darkest moments, a good book can make a difference. After the war, the world will try to go back to normal. The Carnegie libraries will reopen. The books will be returned. But for now, you are a cog in a vast machine, an engine of paperbacks churning out narratives to keep the boys in the fight. The noise of the world fades away. You are surrounded by stories, and for a moment, that's enough. In this mountain of books, you find yourself. The scent of paper and glue fills your lungs. The rustle of turning pages echoes in your ears. You are no longer a librarian, a teacher, a clerk, a housewife, a student. You are a book sorter, and for now, that's enough. In 2023, we are launching a brand new series of in-depth tours looking at some of the pivotal buildings of the modern era. Each episode is like a mini documentary, giving you even more insights into the buildings and the stories behind them. These specials are only available on our platform. We're kicking off with the story of Falling Water. When the crates of well-loved paperbacks arrived at his monastery, Brother Thomas gladly shouldered the task of lugging them inside. For him, these battered boxes held untold treasures, each book a potential portal to faraway lands or exciting adventures. As he stacked them carefully on the shelves, he thought about how lucky the boys were to have this collection. Their laughter and chatter drifted in from the courtyard where they were playing. Just yesterday, their lives had been filled with fear and uncertainty. Now there was a fragile peace, a chance for a fresh start. But Brother Thomas was troubled. He wasn't sure if this old abbey, tucked away in the rolling hills of the Italian countryside, was really big enough for all the boys who needed shelter. What if more families, fleeing the chaos of the recent war, sought refuge here? They couldn't all fit in the existing dormitories. He knew he needed to think bigger, bolder. But where would he find the resources to expand the facilities? He didn't have much time. Winter was coming, and with it, more families seeking safety, more children who needed love and care. His worries seemed to drift away as he read aloud to the boys, sharing stories that made them giggle and gasp. In those moments, it didn't matter that the roof leaked, that the chapel's stained glass windows were shattered, that the garden wall was crumbling here. Surrounded by the laughter of children and the smell of well-thumbed books, he felt a surge of hope. Maybe this place, despite its flaws, was big enough for everyone. Maybe they could build something special here together. That evening, after tucking the boys in, Thomas found himself sitting alone. In the fading light, staring at a map of the grounds, he traced the path of a stream that meandered nearby, and suddenly he sat up straighter, his heart pounding with excitement. He looked at the map again. That area, a bit overgrown, a bit neglected, was big enough to build something substantial. He jumped up and started pacing. It would take just a few structures, maybe some sheds, maybe a chapel, and most importantly, somewhere for the boys to sleep. Warm and dry, safe from the elements, and most importantly, safe from harm. The monastery was going to grow. The vision that had come to him that night became a reality, thanks to an anonymous benefactor who provided funding. The farm buildings were erected and soon they were ready for their new inhabitants. The dormitories were full of bunk beds, neatly stacked bookshelves lining the walls, and each boy had a worn but treasured teddy bear or doll to keep them company. The chapel, built from stone salvaged from the ruined abbey, stood proudly, offering solace and the promise of a better tomorrow. Brother Thomas watched the boys running and playing, their laughter music to his ears. He knew he had created a sanctuary. This place was no longer just an old abbey. It was a beacon of hope, a reminder that even after the darkest nights, the sun rises again. Fast forward to today. Brother Thomas's vision has expanded, and what once was a humble monastery is now a sprawling institution. The needs of the local community have grown, and so have the facilities. Dormitories have become classrooms, farm buildings have transformed into workshops, and the chapel stands as a constant symbol of hope. But the question remains, how do you expand without compromising the essence of what Brother Thomas started? How do you balance the need for growth with the desire to preserve the spirit of a place? And how does one go about putting such a huge expansion project? At the same time, the preservation of a heritage site requires sensitivity and planning. The original buildings are not just structures, they're silent witnesses to history. Every brick, every window tells a story. How do you honor those stories while embracing the inevitable changes of time? As you walk through the bustling hallways and courtyards, you're struck by the energy. Everywhere you see the imprint of Brother Thomas's dream, the echoes of children's laughter, the murmur of teachers sharing their wisdom. You realize this isn't just a school. It's a living testament to the power of hope and the enduring spirit of humanity. The question is, how do you build a new chapter in this story without overshadowing the legacy of the past? This is your host. Thanks for watching this episode of our series. We've explored the incredible stories of several impactful sites, delving into their histories, significance, and the fascinating individuals who've shaped them. If you're as passionate about these places as we are, why not join our community? We'd love to have you. This short comes from an ongoing project. Now let's get back to the story. Welcome to my channel where we believe that stories have the power to transport us, to teach us, and to connect us. That's why we're so excited to partner with an author to bring you this original interactive fiction series. The year is 1985 and the world of libraries is in the midst of a seismic shift. Technology is marching forward at breakneck speed and the hushed, paper-scented halls of academia are about to get a serious upgrade. As a newly minted librarian, you find yourself at the forefront of this revolution. The echoing, concrete vastness of the brutalist library remains, but a new, foreign sound has begun to permeate its quiet spaces, a low, persistent, electric hum. A dozen computer terminals have materialized on desks in the stacks, their presence an alien artifact in a sea of leather armchairs and towering bookshelves. You run your fingers along the spine of a well-worn novel, inhaling the familiar, comforting scent of old paper and binding glue, a scent that's always meant solace and calm. But now it's underscored by a new, unfamiliar smell, the peculiar, acrid aroma of ozone warming from the plastic casings of these strange machines. Their screens glow with a faint, greenish light, casting an alien aura in the hushed space. In the center of the room, the magnificent, multi-drawered wooden brain that has been the heart of every library for over a century, the card catalog, still stands proudly. But now it's flanked by these new, beige machines. A silent, cold war seems to hang in the air between the analog past and the digital future. And you are stationed squarely on the front line. Your professional identity is also in flux. Just yesterday, you were certain that you were a librarian, the inheritor of an ancient profession as old as civilization itself. Now the label on your office door reads System Specialist, or soon will. It's a title that feels foreign, almost hostile, and you're not sure what it means. The task before you is formidable. These terminals are portals to a brave new world of instant access and global connectivity. A world that looks very different from the one you were trained for. The familiar Dewey Decimal System that once felt like the bedrock of order is suddenly called into question. What does it mean for a librarian to exist in this new reality? And what will your role be in bridging the gap between the musty past and the flashing, humming future? The first step on this journey is learning the language of the new machines. OCLC, the Ohio College Library Center, is a trailblazing consortium that has developed a revolutionary way of storing and sharing information. Their invention, the Online Public Access Catalog, or OPAC, promises to change everything. At the heart of this innovation is a simple idea: the standardization of data. OCLC created a new language called Machine Readable Cataloging, or MARC, which allows libraries to translate their physical catalogs into a digital format. This breakthrough makes it possible for libraries across the country to share their resources, creating a vast network of interconnected information. To become a systems specialist, you must first master this new language, learning how to translate the rich complexity of human knowledge into the precise, unambiguous language of data entry. It's a daunting task, but the potential rewards are immense. Imagine a world where patrons can access the combined resources of countless libraries with just a few keystrokes. A world where the boundaries of knowledge are no longer limited by geography or time. With the advent of the OPAC, this world is within reach, and you are at the forefront of making it a reality. But the path to progress is rarely smooth. The translation process from the physical to the digital is fraught with challenges. There are countless decisions to make about how to categorize and codify information, and each one carries with it a profound set of implications. For instance, how do you represent the nuances of a subject heading like shipwrecks or glassmaking? How do you ensure that the digital catalog can capture the serendipity and the joy of discovery that are so integral to the library experience? As you grapple with these challenges, you'll need to balance the demands of the new technology with the timeless principles of good librarianship. It's a tightrope walk, but the stakes couldn't be higher. The success of this endeavor will depend on your ability to navigate the complexities of this uncharted territory, and the future of your library, perhaps even the future of libraries everywhere, may rest on your shoulders. The digital revolution is not just about efficiency and access. It's about a fundamental shift in the way we interact with information. It's a brave new world full of possibilities, but it's also a world that demands a new kind of expertise, a blend of old world knowledge and new world skills. This transformation is both exciting and daunting, and you find yourself at the epicenter of this change. Your journey as a systems specialist has just begun, and the challenges that lie ahead are immense. But with every challenge comes an opportunity for growth, for innovation, and for making a lasting impact on the world. The future is yours to shape. Are you ready to answer the call? We're thrilled to partner with an author on this innovative storytelling project that blends the immersive experience of interactive fiction with the power of educational games. Our shared goal is to create engaging and thought-provoking content that not only entertains, but also inspires learning and sparks important conversations. We hope you enjoy this unique interactive fiction series, and look forward to bringing you more exciting projects in the future. Don't forget to stay tuned for new updates and join us on our mission to make learning fun and accessible for everyone. Together, we can unlock the power of stories to educate, entertain, and inspire. Let's embark on this exciting journey and see where it takes us. In 2005, something amazing happened. Every single person in the world who had an interest in anything, anywhere, could suddenly talk to each other. The electric hum of the early computer terminals has swelled into a constant, low thrum, the sound of the entire world coming online at once. Along with this vast network came a near infinite amount of information, a collective consciousness of knowledge, facts, trivia, wisdom, half-truths, memes, cat videos, and noise. The world went wild, and in the midst of it all, in the middle of the great Google dilemma, the library stood still, anchored to the earth, bathed in the familiar glow of its incandescent lights. Around it, the world spun faster and faster, but inside, things were different. Here, the air hung heavy with the scent of old paper and leather and hushed voices. Here, rows upon rows of books stood sentinel, silent witnesses to centuries of human thought and imagination. And then one day, the unthinkable happened. Someone walked through the door carrying a laptop. At first, it was just one person, then another, then a flood. Soon, the quiet, reverential space of the past was gone, replaced by a new, vibrant, and frankly noisy reality. Your library is no longer just a place for books. It is a community center, a tech hub, a homeless shelter, a tutoring space, a recording studio, and 1,000 other things, all at once. The scent of old paper is now layered with the smell of microwave popcorn from the new teen lounge, the zesty aroma of lemon disinfectant wipes used to clean public keyboards, and the faint, metallic tang of anxiety. Welcome to the library, where nothing is certain except change, where the stacks still stand, but the card catalog has been ripped out and replaced by a flat-screen TV tuned to the local news, which shows images of the very building you're in, reporting on how libraries are dying across the country. Because you see, when Google was born, the mainstream historical fact of this era was the existential question the internet posed. If information is free and ubiquitous, what is a library for? The initial panic was real. Some pundits claimed the internet would spell the end of libraries as we knew them. Others said they were already obsolete. Budgets were slashed, and many a librarian despaired as people stopped coming into the building altogether. But then something surprising happened. Instead of clinging to the past, libraries pivoted and transformed themselves into something new. something vital. The quiet, carpeted rooms were brightened and opened up. Book drops were removed, replaced by glass doors with motion sensors that chimed merrily when you entered. The library became a welcoming space, bright and open and full of possibility. It was still a sanctuary, but one that embraced the messiness and unpredictability of life itself. No longer a place where you went to be quiet, but a place where you went to be inspired, informed, and connected. The mainstream historical fact is that libraries adapted and not only survived, but thrived in the digital age. They rolled out public computer labs and free Wi-Fi long before these were commonplace, becoming the only lifeline for job seekers without internet at home, for seniors trying to connect with grandchildren on email, for students finishing homework assignments. Suddenly, the librarian's role shifted from gatekeeper of information to navigator of the digital chaos. As patrons walked through the doors, you greeted them with a smile and a hello. "How can I help you today?" Instead of telling them where to find the Dewey Decimal System, you helped someone attach a resume to an email or guided a terrified patron through their first video call or taught a class on how to spot fake news online. All the while, you kept one eye on the room, ready to jump in when a kid got frustrated at the computer, or an elderly gentleman needed help downloading a photo from his phone. The quaint, ordered world of books and periodicals gave way to a glorious cacophony of human experiences. The study carols are still there, but now they are occupied by someone quietly watching a Korean drama on their laptop next to someone studying for the bar exam. The once silent reference desk now fields questions like, "Can you help me fix my printer? Where is the Minecraft club? And do you have any books on how to start a pet psychic business?" Suddenly, the library became a stage for the most wonderfully niche human interests. Each day brought new faces and fresh challenges. You hosted everything from book clubs to board game nights, coding classes to crafting circles, author talks to poetry slams. One evening you might host a club for medieval reenactors, the next a seminar on blockchain technology. On the busiest days, the library resembled a bustling city square, a melting pot of cultures and perspectives all seeking a piece of the action. Teenagers hunched over laptops collaborating on multimedia projects. Seniors sat at tables playing checkers and discussing current events. Parents with strollers navigated the stacks while children in tow climbed the nearby bookshelf. Mountains. It was a whirlwind, exhilarating and exhausting in equal measure. But amidst the chaos, there was beauty. The library became a crucible where ideas were exchanged, connections were made, and communities were forged. It was a place where introverts could shine, where shy souls found their voice and where unlikely friendships blossomed. You witnessed it all, the triumphs and the struggles, the laughter and the tears, the quiet moments of contemplation and the boisterous debates. You saw people grow, learn and change right before your eyes. You watched them discover new passions, uncover hidden talents and find their place in the world. It was a privilege to be a part of that journey, to be a witness to the transformative power of the library. And then there were the oddities, the quirks, the downright bizarre moments that made you wonder if you were running a library or a portal to another dimension. Who leaves a ceramic garden gnome at the book drop? Why is there a box of kittens in the children's section? And what exactly is the deal with that life-sized cardboard cutout of Abraham Lincoln in the basement? These mysteries only added to the charm of the library, making it a place where anything could happen, and where the only certainty was uncertainty. You found strange and wonderful items left at the book drop. Not just books, but homemade cookies, a kind gesture, but a pest control nightmare, elaborate hand-drawn fan fiction, some sweet, some disturbingly violent, and once, a single, very clean ceramic garden gnome. Patrons wanted to borrow all kinds of things, cake pans, fishing poles, even seeds for a community garden. There was always something new to discover, something to surprise and delight. Through it all, you remained the anchor, the steady presence in the storm, the person who could answer any question, solve any problem, or point them in the right direction. You became a kind of librarian superhero, armed not with superpowers, but with an encyclopedic knowledge of your collection and a genuine love of helping others. You were the ultimate problem solver, the master of finding things, the weaver of connections. You were the heart and soul of the library, the glue that held it all together. But as the years passed, you couldn't help but wonder if this brave new world of books and bits was changing the very essence of the library. Was the embrace of noise and activity come at the cost of the quiet contemplation necessary for deep reading and study? Were libraries trying to be too many things to too many people, risking a loss of their unique identity? Was the digital age making us all too dependent on the instant gratification of Google? Too reliant on the library as a social service provider? Had we lost sight of the original purpose of the library as a center of knowledge and research? Then one day, as you stood in the middle of the bustling library surrounded by the cacophony of activity, you realized something. The answer wasn't about choosing between the physical and the digital, but about weaving them together into a new, stronger kind of net to catch anyone the world might otherwise let fall through. The library had always been a place of contradictions, a balance between order and chaos, between tradition and change. It was a place where the past and the present met, and where the future was always being written. And you, the librarian, were at the center of it all, a keeper of stories and a weaver of connections, a guide to the infinite possibilities that lay within the pages of books and the bits and bytes of the digital world. You understood that the true purpose of the library wasn't to compete with Google or to cling to the past, but to evolve, to adapt, and to embrace the messiness and unpredictability of life itself. The library wasn't just a building. It was a community, a living, breathing entity that reflected the hopes, dreams, and struggles of the people it served. And as long as there were people in the world who craved knowledge and connection, the library would be there for them, a beacon of hope in the darkness, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. You know what's weird? Even though we've built libraries for thousands of years, every time I do a video about the future of libraries, you guys seem genuinely surprised that they might still be relevant in like a century or two. So let me clarify, the library is never going away. It is literally baked into our collective DNA at this point. It is the most ubiquitous public building type in the entire world. There are over 300,000 libraries in the US alone, one for roughly every 8,000 people. And even in the farthest reaches of cyberspace, when avatars meet up, they congregate in a space called the library. So if you're wondering if the library is gonna stick around, the answer is obviously yes. The question is, what will it look like? In my previous video about the library of the future, we explored how artificial intelligence, biotechnology, nanotechnology, and virtual reality would change how we experience literature and information. Today we're taking a step back from that hyper-techy future and asking what happens if everything goes wrong? What if the future is dystopian? How does the library adapt to those realities? Let's jump in. The year is 2042. The climate has shifted, and with it, the role of the library has undergone its most profound transformation yet. The smells have changed again. The popcorn and lemon wipes are still there, but now they're layered with the sterile scent of HEPA filters and the faint, earthy smell of wet rain gear from patrons arriving from a storm. You are a librarian, but your title feels inadequate. You are a community resilience coordinator, an information integrity specialist, a climate refuge manager. The library is no longer just a square or a hub. It is a sanctuary, a bunker of truth and stability in a world that feels increasingly unstable. The mainstream historical fact that has redefined the library is the climate crisis. As extreme weather events became more frequent and severe, cities looked for buildings that could serve as official cooling centers, heating centers, and clean air shelters. Libraries were the obvious choice. They were publicly owned, centrally located, physically robust, and crucially, they were already trusted by the community. Your library's basement, once used for old periodical storage, now houses a vast water purification system and emergency supplies. The massive server banks that host the local digital history archive also power the library's microgrid, allowing it to operate for weeks independently of the city's failing infrastructure. The collection has evolved, too. Yes, the fiction shelves are still well loved, but the fastest growing section is practical survival, guides on urban gardening, water management, emergency medicine, and renewable energy tech. The library has become a physical lifeline, a place to charge devices during a blackout, to access the internet when networks are down, to find clean water, and to simply exist in a safe, temperature-controlled environment. This new role as a civic shelter has brought with it a host of quirky, poignant, and deeply human challenges. This is where the library's ethos is tested and refined. You now host crisis cafes, not about literary criticism, but where neighbors can share tips on sealing windows against heat, or where to find the best prices on solar panels. The Seed Library program, once a cute novelty, is now a critical food security initiative, with patrons carefully checking out packets of drought-resistant corn and heirloom tomatoes. The most unexpected new service? Acoustic damping. In a world of louder storms and heightened urban anxiety, the library has consciously cultivated its quietness as a commodity. The rare book room, with its extra thick walls, is now booked weeks in advance, not by scholars, but by people seeking an hour of profound, guaranteed silence, a respite from the sensory overload of the world outside. It is the ultimate irony. The library, which once killed the shush, has now made silence its most valuable and sought-after resource. Historians and urban planners still argue whether this transformation into a climate infrastructure sanctuary represents the ultimate fulfillment of the library as democratic mission or a tragic diversion from its core purpose as a cultural and intellectual institution. Has the library become so essential as physical infrastructure that it risks neglecting its role as a guardian of stories, art, and the human spirit? Is the focus on pure survival crowding out the space for philosophy, for poetry, for the kinds of knowledge that don't immediately help you weather a storm, but are essential for weathering a life? You walk the floors during a mandatory shelter-in-place order, during a particularly bad atmospheric river event. The main reading area is filled with families, their belongings in neat piles next to them. Some are reading, yes, but many are just sitting, staring into space, soothed by the simple, stable fact of the building itself. In this moment, the library isn't just providing information, it is providing certainty. It is a promise that some structures, both physical and social, will hold. So here's the thing. We live in an age of accelerating technological change, which leads us to think of the future as inherently digital, virtual, online. But the reality is that regardless of all the futuristic trappings, the future will still be profoundly analog. It will still be about keeping people alive and thriving on planet Earth. If you're skeptical that the library would still matter in a climate-devastated future, consider this. Libraries are the most energy-efficient buildings on Earth. They leverage passive design strategies like super insulation, natural ventilation, and daylighting to keep people comfortable while consuming far less energy than other public facilities. This matters because in a future shaped by scarcity, the library's existing skill set will be highly relevant. But it's not just about operating in a lean, mean, sustainable way. It is also about ensuring that crucial information and the skills to use it are widely available to everyone. Whether it is fixing a solar panel or figuring out the best way to grow sprouts on a windowsill, the library can help people acquire the practical knowledge necessary to survive and thrive in a leaner, meaner future. And here's the real irony. While the library has traditionally been a haven from the chaos of the outside world, that model is now actively being put to the test. Many libraries have already integrated services to support people experiencing homelessness or fleeing domestic violence, and in the future, these roles will only expand. In a world where basic needs like food, water, and safety are less guaranteed, the library's commitment to universal access and inclusion will be more vital than ever. All of this is to say that in a future shaped by ecological disaster, economic instability, and social upheaval, the library, with its deep roots in community resilience, equitable access, and practical knowledge, is uniquely positioned to help us navigate the challenges ahead. It won't be easy. There will be difficult decisions, trade-offs, and ethical dilemmas to confront. But if we approach these challenges head-on with courage, creativity, and compassion, the library can continue to fulfill its timeless mission of providing not just books and information, but a sanctuary for the human spirit. When thinking about the future of the library, it's really helpful to take inspiration from the past. The modern library movement was kick-started by the ancient Greeks, moved through the Enlightenment period, found its feet in the 19th century, and then spread around the globe. For a deeper dive into the history of the library, stay tuned for this week's bonus episode, which will explore the fascinating origins of the Dewey Decimal System. It's actually way crazier than you think. The crucial thing to understand about the library of the future is that it will always be defined by its relationship to the world around it. As society changes, the library adapts. That's why in the future, the library will absolutely still be relevant. In a world of accelerating technological change, it's really easy to imagine the future as virtual, digital, online. But the reality is that regardless of all the futuristic trappings, the future will still be profoundly analog. It will still be about keeping people alive and thriving on planet Earth. The future of the library is not a separate place. It's right here. It's this building. It's this room. It's this book. It's us. And it will always be whatever we decide it should be, as long as we remember that the library is more than just a building or a collection of books. It's a living, breathing entity that reflects and supports the needs and aspiration of the people it serves. It's a mirror to society and a catalyst for positive change. It's a beacon of hope in uncertain times. It's a library and that makes it irreplaceable. As the city outside succumbs to chaos, there's a place that remains unchanged, a sanctuary of calm amidst the storm. Welcome to my channel. Today we head to a haven of tranquility, a fortified library, the filtered air, the hum of the microgrid, the solid certainty of the library as sanctuary. These begin to soften at the edges, not fading away, but blending into something even older and more profound. You feel the weight of countless untold stories pressing against your shoulders, and for a moment, the rustle of turning pages echoes in your ears even though none are near. But then the sounds fade, leaving you in a stillness that's deeper than any silence you've known. The year is indistinct, a point on a curve stretching far into the future. Here, time itself seems to slow, each second holding the potential for eternity. Outside, the world has changed beyond recognition, but within these sheltering walls, there's a timeless quality to the air, a sense of enduring peace that transcends the chaos of the outside world. You are no longer just a resilience coordinator or a system specialist. You are an archivist of the human spirit. The air is perfectly still, temperature controlled to the precise degree that best preserves both paper and server. The only sound is the soft, rhythmic pulse of indicator lights on the vast server banks that now stand where the iron stacks once did. Their cooling systems a silent, efficient breath. You find yourself drawn to the heart of the library, where the energy of human thought and creation once crackled among the bookshelves. Now there's an ethereal hum, a symphony of data flowing through the veins of the digital realm. The rows upon rows of servers are a modern-day scriptorium, a testament to the insatiable human curiosity. The world outside has become unrecognizable, yet here in the library, there's a continuity that feels eternal. You touch a cool metal server rail, feeling the solidity of the machinery that keeps history alive. It's a stark contrast to the fleeting images and sounds of the digital world. You think back to the frantic rush of uploading files, the hushed whispers of old archives, the sudden crashes that threaten to erase precious bits of history. Yet here in this place of enduring tranquility, everything is saved, every word, every image, every sound, all preserved in the cold, hard reality of ones and zeros. You're not sure how long you stay here, lost in the comforting hum of the servers. Time has lost all meaning. The only constant is the steady glow of the lights, a beacon in the darkness, a testament to the power of human knowledge and creativity. It's a strange mix of emotions, a sense of profound loss for the world outside mixed with the quiet joy of preservation. The outside world may have crumbled, but here, within the library, there's a sense of continuity, of life everlasting. It's a quiet celebration of the human spirit, a celebration of knowledge and understanding. The books on the shelves, once sources of wisdom and comfort, now silent sentinels of a bygone era. The digital archives, once a sprawling, chaotic landscape, now a meticulously organized panorama of human history. You realize that you are no longer just a caretaker of information. You are a weaver of human experience, stitching together the disparate threads of our collective past to create a rich tapestry of our species' journey through time. You're part of a lineage of storytellers, chroniclers, librarians, and archivists who have dedicated their lives to preserving the essence of humanity. And in the midst of this realization, you understand that this is more than a job. It's a calling, a responsibility, a privilege, and ultimately, a legacy. It's a legacy that transcends the confines of this room, reaching out to touch every corner of the human experience. You're not just keeping history alive, you're breathing life into history. In doing so, you're honoring the countless individuals whose thoughts, dreams, and actions have shaped our world. You're keeping alive the conversations that have defined our species, the debates that have driven progress, the stories that have inspired us, and the memories that have bound us together. The silence is no longer empty. It's filled with the echoes of human endeavor, the whispers of wisdom, and the murmur of forgotten tales. It's a silence that invites contemplation, that beckons you to explore the depths of human experience. As you walk through the vast, echoing space, you feel a profound sense of connection, not just to the past, but to the very essence of humanity. You're standing on the shoulders of giants, both literally and metaphorically. The books, the documents, the digital archives, they are all testaments to the human spirit, to our capacity for thought, creativity, and innovation. You remember the frantic pace of the outside world, the relentless pressure of deadlines, the constant barrage of information. But here, in the hushed stillness of the library, you find a different kind of strength, the strength that comes from solitude, from a deep connection to the past, and from the quiet satisfaction of knowing that you're part of something much bigger than yourself. You are an archivist of human experience, and your work is more vital, more meaningful, and more enduring than you could have ever imagined. The world outside may change, evolve, and even collapse, but here, within the hallowed halls of the library, there is a timeless quality to your purpose. You are a keeper of the flame, a guardian of memory, a curator of context, and a permanent resident of the present. You are a witness to the past, a participant in the present, and a shaper of the future. In the grand narrative of humanity, your role is both humble and monumental. And as you stand here in the heart of the library, you realize that you're not just a cog in a machine. You are the machine. You are the living embodiment of the library's purpose, and that purpose, quite simply, is to endure. This final form of the library is perhaps the most extraordinary and surprising of all. It is the culmination of centuries of evolution, a testament to human ingenuity, and a symbol of our enduring fascination with knowledge and storytelling. In this form, the library is a sanctuary, a refuge from the storms of the outside world, a place where knowledge is power and ignorance has no hold. It is a place where the past is honored, the present is understood, and the future is shaped. It is a place where we can lose ourselves in the boundless realms of imagination and discovery. But what led us to this point? How did the library, in all its myriad forms, become the ultimate repository of human knowledge and experience? The answer, like the library itself, is complex, multifaceted, and profoundly human. From the earliest days of civilization, humans have had an innate desire to preserve their experiences, their knowledge, and their stories. The library, in its most primitive form, was born out of this desire. It started with a single clay tablet etched with cuneiform script, a papyrus scroll recording the deeds of ancient kings, a wooden box filled with treasured scrolls, a temple housing sacred texts. Each of these early libraries represented a significant step in the evolution of human civilization, a testament to our growing need to capture and share our experiences. Over the centuries, libraries evolved alongside human society. They grew from small collections of personal texts to vast repositories of public knowledge. They became centers of learning, places where scholars could gather, debate ideas, and push the boundaries of human understanding. The invention of the printing press in the 15th century was a pivotal moment in the library's history, allowing for the mass production of books and making knowledge more accessible to more people than ever before. The rise of the internet in the late 20th century was another such revolution, transforming the library from a static repository of physical books to a dynamic hub of digital information. Today, the library stands at the forefront of human achievement, a testament to our collective curiosity, creativity, and desire to understand the world around us. It is a place where we can explore the depths of human knowledge, where we can uncover the mysteries of the past, and where we can dream of the possibilities of the future. In many ways, the library represents the very essence of humanity. It is a place where we come to learn, to grow, and to connect with others. It is a place where we can discover new ideas, explore different perspectives, and challenge our own beliefs. It is a place where we can engage with the world around us and make a positive impact on society. Yet despite its importance, the library faces numerous challenges in today's rapidly changing world. Issues such as censorship, intellectual freedom, copyright, privacy, and the spread of misinformation threaten the very foundations of the library's purpose. However, these challenges also present an opportunity for the library to adapt, to innovate, and to reaffirm its role as a vital institution in our society. By embracing new technologies, by fostering greater diversity and inclusion, and by working tirelessly to uphold the principles of intellectual freedom, the library can ensure that it remains a beacon of knowledge and enlightenment for generations to come. In a world that often feels dark and uncertain, the library offers a sanctuary, a place where we can find comfort in the familiar and inspiration in the unknown. It is a place where we can escape the noise of the outside world and immerse ourselves in the beauty of stories, the wonder of discovery, and the joy of learning. The library is more than just a building or an institution. It is a reflection of the human spirit, a celebration of our curiosity, and a testament to our enduring quest for knowledge and understanding. It is a place where we can discover who we are, explore where we want to go, and create the world we want to live in. And so, as we step through the doors of the library, we enter not just a building, but a world of infinite possibilities, a world where the past comes to life, where the future takes shape, and where the power of stories connects us all.